Sports bar manager changing the TV. I was at a sports bar watching UFC fights on a Saturday afternoon. It was pretty dead until around 5 when the early dinner crowd started arriving. One family came in and asked their waitress if they could switch the large projector screen from the fights. She came over and asked me, and I said it was fine as long as they put the fights on another TV. The family had the main TV switched to ESPN, which had one of their special documentaries on at that time rather than live sports. Then the family asked if they could switch the smaller TV that I had just had switched to the fights. The waitress said no since they'd already requested another TV. The family was annoyed and asked for the manager. When the manager got to their table, the father demanded that the fights be changed so their son, who was probably around 8, couldn't see the fights since they were violent and not family-friendly. The manager tried to calm the family by moving the fights to a TV behind their son, which I would have been fine with. However, the father demanded that the fights couldn't be on any TV as long as the family was at the sports bar. Then he accused the manager of not caring about young children for insisting that the fights remain on somewhere. The manager nodded and said he'd get the TV sorted out. Then he also asked the father if he should change the music playing since it was pop. The father grunted about that being nice, and how the manager was finally being responsible and looking out for children. While this was happening, the manager sent the family's waitress over to put their order in. Then once their order was in the system, the manager switched the TV again. He put the UFC fights back on the main TV. But this time he turned the sound on as well since the pop music could be bad for children. The father started loudly complaining again and called the manager back over. He demanded that the TV be changed again. And when the manager said no, the father demanded to speak to the owner. The manager said he'd get the owner, but it may take a few minutes. The manager changed into a sport coat and came back over. It turned out he was a part owner of the sports bar. Now the father really lost and said his family was leaving. The owner calmly asked if he should have the family's meals changed to takeout orders. The father said they were leaving and wouldn't pay for the food the family had ordered. The owner said the family had to pay for their meals since they were already being cooked. The father continued arguing until the owner threatened to call the cops if they left without paying. The family ended up paying, but left when their food came several minutes later. Until they left, the father made the son sit there with his eyes closed and ears covered so he wasn't exposed to the fight. I busted out laughing once the family left. Takes family to a sports bar where sports are being shown. Freaks out when family is exposed to sports at a sports bar. If you're gonna go in a locker room, you're gonna see some dicks. It seems to me that if I were so concerned about what my 8-year-old son sees and hears, I would not take my 8-year-old son to a sports bar in the first place. But my sons are all grown up now, so maybe I'm out of touch with parenting skills. I was really hoping the manager was going to refuse to serve alcohol to the table because the child was there after the manager voluntarily asked about the music. Hooters was probably too packed that night. I was at the lone hockey bar in my small town once while the CBJ were in the playoffs. It was predictably loud during the game. And as a bonus, the bartender even wore rollerblades and had a team-signed hockey stick with him behind the bar. About 15 minutes before the kitchen closed, an older gentleman in his mid-30s, if I had to guess, daughter walked in and he said, "I'm trying to have a quiet dinner with my daughter. Can you turn that off?" The bartender just looked at him, picked up the stick and said, "This is a sports bar, sir." He shut up after that. Why wait to start laughing? They were clearly being very obnoxious in a public setting. So public ridicule is on the table. Would have served them right. I was at a sports bar minding my own business when a Karen demanded that I stop swearing because of the children. I guarantee that given age of her children, they could have given me a run for my money. The child is learning a lot worse behavior from watching their dad than they would have from the fights. Interesting. They go to a sports bar and are offended that there's sport. Although I think that's a stretch when it comes to boxing, but not my call. On the tellies? No doubt if they'd gone to strip club he'd be demanding that dancers all cover up so as not to offend his child's sensibilities. What a maroon. OMG. I did something similar to this before when I was the GM of a sports bar. A family came in and complained the speakers were too loud. So I turned it down even though it wasn't. Then they complained that the TVs were all showing football when it was in the middle of the afternoon on a Saturday. Then they complained that the menu didn't have enough options for kids. All the while, the server has just had it and came to me for help. I walked over to try and see what I could do to make their lunch experience a little better. Karen wasn't having any of it. She wanted a TV turned to some news channel talking about whatever political party she was affiliated with. She demanded that we give her a discount because the kids' menu had limited items. But it doesn't. When I told her no about the discount and TV and heard all of her other complaints, she demanded to speak to the manager since I was just the bartender. I was wearing a top with our logo because I bartended during the mornings and then switched to casual dress to manage at night. I informed her that I will fetch them right away. I went to my office and threw on my casual dress top, changed my shoes, and put on my reading glasses. I strut back to the table, and in my fakest customer service voice, I asked her how I could be of service. She was speechless. I kindly informed her that I was the highest person in the building that she would be speaking with today and that if she had any more questions, I'd be glad to help. She asked for her server and stopped complaining. The rest of her experience seemed to be okay because she ate, paid, and left without a single peep. I'll be honest, I wouldn't go to a bar with a UFC match playing. That said, I wouldn't go to that bar. What asshat thinks they can dictate what's on a TV in a bar? I get it if there is a game you want to watch. But to ask that something not be on is ridiculous. Why kids shouldn't be allowed in bars? When I was a kid, anytime Muhammad Ali was fighting, my mom always had the fight on. Somehow I turned out okay. I always feel like such a jerk asking a waitress to change one of the 2000 sports bar TVs to the game I wanted to watch. Can you imagine telling them to turn off what another customer was watching? TBH. I don't really get how UFC is that much more violent than football. Both end up being sweaty guys in revealing spandex having a cuddle struggle on the ground. That father was way out of line. If he didn't like what was being shown, he could have just left without ordering food. What did they expect going to a sports bar? Sounds like an entitled family from Long Island N.Y. I love watching sports on the TVs in sports bars. However, I'm not sure I will ever go to one again on the 4th of July. My son and I were eating lunch at BWW on the 4th a few years ago, and on several TVs they were showing the annual hot dog eating contest. It was horrifying. There was nowhere safe to look. The service was really bad that day. I don't blame them. They were woefully understaffed. So we suffered in silence rather than dare complain. It actually turned out to be one of my favorite visits to BWW because my son and I were laughing almost non-stop at how sorry we felt for ourselves. Oh, But that was gross. Utah? Moments have really strange ideas about what's appropriate for people to see. A friend had an app on phone which could control TVs. We just had to get the model know of the TV. Was great fun to switch over channels at just the perfect time.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Haircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.